What's going on, Guardians? It's Tizzle here, and I want to welcome you to Subclass School, the series where I teach you everything you need to know about every subclass in Destiny. So a couple disclaimers to start. These videos take a ton of time and effort to produce, so leaving a like on the video would mean a lot to me. Let's shoot for 10,000 likes on this one. Next, I do all my own testing, but I also use the Destiny Data Compendium to cross-reference my findings, or for certain values like damage resistance. It's an extremely great resource, and I leave a link to it in the description of every single one of my videos. So shout out to the wonderful people who work on that spreadsheet. Also, when doing my testing, I don't use any aspect, fragment, or mod that could interfere with the testing. So you are seeing everything at its base level, so that you know exactly how it works at a baseline. Next, a big thank you to my friends and clanmates who help me test the things that require 2 or more people. It means a lot. And lastly, I am trying to reach 50,000 subscribers before the final shape, so do me a solid and hit subscribe. I know it seems like a lofty goal, but nearly 90% of my viewers are not subscribed. Now, I'm not too bad at math, so if we can bring that closer to even 50%, then I know we can reach 50k in no time. I have a ton of great content planned, so I know you won't regret it. Anyways, that's it, let's get into the video. So in today's video, we'll be looking at the arc abilities. This includes melees, grenades, supers, and even a jump that is specific to Arc Hunter and a class ability that is specific to Arc Titan. So let's get those out of the way first. The special Arc Hunter jump is Blink. It states, jump while airborne to teleport a short distance. I couldn't find any compendium info, but there isn't too much to know. It is just another movement tool that allows you to traverse. But this one has a bit of a skill gap and takes some getting used to. Next is the Titan Thruster class ability. It states, while grounded, quickly evade in a lateral direction. This is good in PvP for avoiding enemy attacks, but it's also wonderful for a Heart of Inmost Light ability spam build in PvE. Traditional barricades have a long cast animation, but this one can be activated extremely fluently while in combat, making it very easy to use and get back to dealing damage. I absolutely love it with my Hoyle Arc Titan. I made a video on this build, and it is truly one of the best in the game, so check it out after this video. Now we will get to the more traditional abilities. We'll start with the melees. Hunter and Warlock have 2 and Titan has 3. So starting with Hunter, we have Combination Blow, which reads, a quick strike that temporarily increases your melee damage when defeating a target, stacking 3 times. Defeating targets with this ability also refills your class ability energy and restores a small amount of health. So this is an awesome melee ability. You can have a super strong gameplay loop when pairing this with Gambler's Dodge, as you can dodge to get your melee, and then get a melee kill to get your dodge back. So you can just keep looping it over and over again. And you have 20 seconds to get a kill to keep stacking Combination Blow times 3. One thing to be aware of though, is that if you are running Lethal Current, your melee will also apply Jolt. This is a good thing as it gives this gameplay loop tremendous ad clear, but it can also mean the Jolt will get the final blow instead of the melee damage. So you may get a melee kill, but not keep Combination Blow going. So just be aware of this. If you don't get your dodge back from a melee kill, this is why. If this happens, just simply quickly try and melee another enemy, and you can usually keep the loop going easily enough. I tested this in PvP too, and even at Combination Blow times 3, it isn't quite enough to fully kill a Guardian. It only goes up by 23% per stack for PvP. So maybe at super low resilience it would kill, but we tested at 5 resil and my buddy TJ still survived. In PvE, each stack goes up by 60%. So at base I hit for around 10,000 damage, and then 16,394, 26,230, and 41,967. And this can stack with things like a 1-2 punch shotgun and even Spark of Feedback and Liar's Handshake. With that combo, I was able to punch for 246,765 damage. And a base melee is 10,246, so this is about 24 times more damage. Truly incredible stuff. So it just goes to show how strong this melee can be in the right build. Next we have Disorienting Blow. Striking a target with this melee ability blinds them and amplifies you. So it's pretty straightforward. It blinds enemies and makes you amplified. Not much more to say. It has some good utility in high-end content because blind is such a powerful verb. And one thing to note is if you run this with Tempest Strike, it seems as though the blind doesn't apply from the Tempest melee hit. Just something to be aware of. Next we have the Titan melees. First is Ballistic Slam, which states, after sprinting and while airborne, activate your charged melee ability to slam to the ground, dealing damage to nearby targets. So I didn't realize this until I made the video, but the compendium says it gives 3% super energy per enemy hit. So I decided to equip Insurmountable Skull Fort and load up a Shuro Chi checkpoint for myself, and holy crap. Even without hands-on on the helmet and heavy-handed on the gloves, I was able to almost get 2 full supers in about 40 seconds. So this is really good for getting a quick super. And this is why I like doing videos like this. I used to run this setup way back in the day before Arc 3.0, but now I may have to dust it off again because wow, this shit is strong. Obviously this is meant for lower end content because slamming into a crowd of enemies in a GM will likely get you killed, and this melee itself doesn't do a ton of damage, so it won't obliterate the ads like you're seeing here. But in lower end content, this melee can do some serious work. I even did another run where I put on 1 hands-on mod and 2 heavy-handed mods, so I was making orbs and getting extra super energy from hands-on, and I easily got 2 supers in Shuro Chi. Next up is Seismic Strike. After sprinting for a short time, activate your charged melee ability to slam shoulder first into your target, damaging and blinding targets in an area around them. While you are amplified, the blind radius is increased. So the compendium doesn't have concrete info on the blind radius because it is very tough to measure, but it can blind targets, and I have spoken at length in other videos how strong blind is. And because it can blind, that means it can obviously stun unstoppable champions. And you can use the melee ability as a movement tool as well, but it will use up 15% of your melee energy so that you can't spam it over and over. And lastly, we have Thunderclap. It's such a cool melee ability. It states, hold while grounded to plant your feet and begin charging your fist with arc energy. Release to unleash a devastating blast in front of you, dealing damage that increases with longer charge time. The compendium states it deals damage in a 7.5 meter cone up to 16 meters away, and it deals up to 80% more damage if you charge it for the full 2-second duration. This can get one-hit kills in PvP too, which is pretty cool. Overall, it's a really fun melee to use, and it can be super effective in the right build. Now we move on to the Warlock melees. We start with Ball Lightning, which states, fire an arc projectile forward that releases a perpendicular lightning strike after a short time. While amplified, Ball Lightning releases additional lightning strikes before detonating. So this ball travels up to 35 meters and it will detonate overhead if it has an enemy below it. This is also great for tagging players behind barricades in PvP. And if you are amplified, the lightning it shoots will explode 3 times instead of just once. Chain Lightning states an extended range melee that jolts your target and chains lightning to nearby targets. While amplified, it creates an additional set of chains. So when you're amplified, then it will create 2 sets of chains, doubling the maximum number of enemies that you can hit, and it also jolts targets. The jolt will not immediately stun an overload however, but it will jolt it so that the follow-up damage will trigger the jolt and stun it. Now we move on to the grenades, which are common to all the classes. First up we have Arc Bolt grenades. This states a grenade that chains bolts of lightning to nearby targets, so it can hit enemies within an 8 meter radius and it can chain up to 3 times. This grenade doesn't hit particularly hard, but it is nice for hitting players behind cover in PvP. Next is the Flashbang grenade, an explosive grenade that damages and blinds nearby targets. Again, a grenade that doesn't hit very hard, but it has awesome utility because it can blind enemies, and it has a short base cooldown as well. The compendium tells us it can blind enemies in an 8 meter radius. Next is the Flux grenade. This grenade does hit hard, and it can even one-shot in PvP. It states an explosive grenade that attaches to targets. It is a high damage grenade that is used for single target damage over ad clear. Next up is the Lightning grenade, a grenade that sticks to any surface and emits a bolt of lightning. I absolutely love these grenades in PvP. I've gotten so many cheeky kills with them on Guardians behind cover. I wish I saved more clips because I've done some nasty things with these grenades. I never use them in PvE as unless there are walls around, then they aren't really that great or easy to use. They stick to walls and emit a lightning bolt every couple seconds, but like I said, they're awesome in PvP. Next is the Pulse grenade, a grenade that periodically damages targets with its explosion radius. It detonates on impact and then releases 6 pulses that damage over 4 seconds. These grenades hit pretty hard in PvE and they're my go-to for most PvE content. Skip grenades are next, a grenade that splits upon impact, creating multiple projectiles that seek targets. So these seek out enemies, and they're nice in PvE for staying behind cover and still tagging enemies, or in PvP for chasing enemies down. They got nerfed a long time ago in PvP though, so they're not as good as they used to be. And lastly is the Storm grenade, a grenade that calls down a focused lightning storm. It deals damage twice in a large radius. These are pretty decent if you're accurate, and they're nice for bunched up groups of adds. They used to be broken on Touch of Thunder Arc Titans, but they've since been reined in, and now pulse grenades are better for PvE in my opinion. So now we move to the supers. First up is the Arc Staff on Hunter. Form a staff of pure arc energy and acrobatically take out your foes. Hold to deflect incoming projectiles with your Arc Staff. So this is actually a really good ad clear super. The problem is the Arc Kit itself is great for ad clear, so it's not totally needed. You can see the compendium has lots of info on how everything works, but the big thing I want to talk about is knowing how to deal the most damage. You do a light attack, then a heavy attack. This will perform a palm strike that deals a ton of damage. It's excellent. And if you run lethal current, then your light attack deals more damage after you dodge. There are lots of intricacies with this super. You can also block incoming damage by twirling your Arc Staff. Like I said, this is a good super, it just isn't needed so much in today's sandbox, but it's a lot of fun. The go-to super now on Arc Hunter is usually Gathering Storm. Hurl your Arc Staff forward, embedding it into surfaces or large targets and jolting nearby targets. After a short time, a devastating lightning bolt strikes the staff, overcharging it with arc energy. While overcharged, your staff discharges lightning at nearby foes. So because our base kits and weapons are so strong now, Gathering Storm has become the better super because it is a one and done. So it's better for boss damage because you can throw it and then deal damage with your weapons. And it's better for high-end content because you can launch it from a distance and stay back, rather than getting into the fray like you do with Arc Staff. And once you chuck it, again, you can go back to dealing damage with your weapons and abilities on the other adds. Another thing I want to mention is if multiple players are using this for boss damage, make sure your teammates stagger their throws, as for some reason, the damage won't count for the subsequent Gathering Storms if one is already applied to a boss. Who knows, maybe this will get fixed one day, but for now, just trust me. Onto the Titan supers, we again have a roaming super and a one-off super. The roaming super is Fists of Havoc, and it states, supercharge your fists and slam the ground with the force of a maelstrom. While active, quickly charge forward, dealing damage to any impacted targets. Slam your fist to the ground, dealing damage in an area around you and leaving aftershocks in your wake. Performing a slam from the air deals additional damage. I tested this pretty extensively, and I couldn't really see the bigger damage numbers from jumping from a higher point. The compendium says it is the aftershocks that deal the damage, and this is very hard to test as the initial enemies die to the slam, or someone like Carl just moves out of the aftershocks. So we'll just have to take Bungie's word on it. But for how annoying it is to get, you are better off just using the super normally. And if you do create more damaging aftershocks because you naturally leapt from a higher point, then great. Once again, this super suffers as a result of the current sandbox. With the strength of strand roaming supers being what they are, I feel like this super is in for a big buff in the final shape. The next super is Thunder Crash. Hurtle through the air like a missile and crash into targets to inflict meteoric damage. So if you fly close by enemies, you will kill them as you travel. Same with PvP players, but if you collide with them, then it will detonate the super. This super is much easier to navigate on mouse and keyboard, and you can use it as a movement tool as well to save yourself in a jumping puzzle or clear gaps. It does decent single target damage, but if you're in activities where you don't have locked loadouts, then you definitely want to swap to Kyrus of the Falling Star as it makes it deal double damage, which is super helpful. Again, this is the go-to super on Titan now because it is a one and done and good for dealing big chunk damage on high health targets like champions in a hurry. Now we have the Warlock supers, and much like the last two, we kinda have a winner and a loser. The first is Chaos Reach. Unleash a long-range channeled beam of concentrated arc energy. Press super while active to deactivate your super early, saving super energy. So being able to retain super energy is very beneficial. You can save up to 30% of it at most, and it is a Kamehameha and looks cool as hell. Honestly, one of the most fun supers in the game to use. And again, it's definitely easier to control on M&K, and it can be cast from a safe distance, so it's nice and high in PvE. Overall, just a really cool and fun super. And the Geomag stabilizers, much like Kyrus, make this super deal damage for a much longer duration, making it a very strong option with those exotic boots equipped. Then we have the last super, Stormtrance, an ad clear super. And we certainly know by now why these aren't the best in the current D2 landscape. It has a blink that you can do to chase down targets quicker, which is really nice in PvP. It is actually just a great super in general in PvP, but it does have a very long cooldown. A cool thing with this super is as you deal damage over time, the damage of it ramps up, so it can actually be good for ad clear and single target damage. When you cast it, there is a landfall which travels in many directions, dealing damage to anything it hits, and it is a good chunk of damage. On Carl, it hits for almost 80,000 damage when I cast the super, and it also applies Jolt. Then the light attack deals 6501 damage initially, and ramps up to 9670, so almost a 50% increase. This super is honestly no slouch, and its damage can be buffed by Stormdancer's Brace, and its duration can be buffed with the Crown of Tempests. So that makes this already pretty good super very strong. But again, it's an ad clear super and a one and done meta. Regardless, it is still very good and very fun to use. And that is going to do it for the abilities on the Arc subclass. To my surprise, this was the longest video in the series, which is pretty atypical. But there are some really strong abilities on this subclass, so I hope this video was able to show the strengths and weaknesses of all of them. And I hope you learned something. And if you did, then leaving a like and hitting that subscribe button would mean a lot to me. And if you enjoyed this video, then definitely check out my other subclass school videos, as I'm sure you will like those too. And lastly, if you're still watching, then you rock. I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching to the end, and take care.